What do you say to people when you photograph them?
I coo like a bloody dove. I say, oh, that's absolutely great. Oh, that's it. Oh, that's marvelous. Now we're really getting somewhere. Now we're cooking with gas.
Look at me, Cecil. That's absolutely marvellous.
Precioso.
Oh, good.
Excellent. That's
Good.
too coy. I really can't go that far.
Good. Can you coo some more?
Yes. All right.
No.
Can I fall out?
Yeah.
Can I get down, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead and walk towards me.
Walk towards you.
Yeah.
You're going into a bush if you're not careful.
Good.
That's right.
Good.
Now
a bit
you
more
get...
animated.
Oh, what can I do?
You can walk a bit faster.
Right. How about
Good.
that?
That's
Sort
great.
of
Bring the
thing.
hat up again.
Oh!
Oh, good. Well,
Fine. Anything else that's been thrown up?
no, you're marvellous.
Any good?
Yeah.
That certain night, that night we met, there was magic abroad in the air. There were angels dining at the Ritz, and a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. I may be right, I may be wrong, but I'm perfectly willing to swear that when you turned and smiled at me, a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. I know, 'cause I was there that night in Berkeley Square.
I was born on Hampstead Heath, a place called Langland Gardens, where the air, my father thought, was so much better for growing children.
I love the sort of freedom that the country gives you, and that's become more and more important to me, I suppose, because I was rather restricted as a child. And I remember the first time I went to a real country holiday to Gloucestershire. It was so wonderful that it sort of impregnated in my very fibers, tissue, and I love it so. I used to be thrilled by these sort of sooty black barks of oak trees. We had a wonderful one in our garden. And I used to take photographs of my sisters over there in the botanical gardens. You had to have special permission to use a tripod. And I was thrilled that Pavlova, the dancer, used to live over the hill at Ivy House. And I used to dress my sisters up. They were very gauche, rather ugly little schoolgirls, dressed as Pavlova. And I think it all is absolutely filled with memories, and most of them very happy ones. I didn't quite so much enjoy walking over the heath to go to school. That was rather alarming, particularly in winter, and going home at night I never enjoyed, because I was sort of rather afraid of unknown things that might lurch out of the dark.
My mother came from Temple Sowerby, a very small village in Westmoreland on the borders of Cumberland. And she was one of many very beautiful sisters. And she came to London to stay with a married sister and met my father, who was, I suppose you would say, a timber merchant. He was in the timber world. And he was a great amateur actor. And my mother once went to see a performance of A Bunch of Violets, and my father was playing the leading part, and it was love at first sight.
We were told to pose, and we posed we did.
And exhausting, too. I mean, at the end, was the only time I stayed still, as you know. Because whenever you said, that's fine, head a little bit that way, head a little bit that way, that's lovely, hold it. And then I'd go like that, and it was absolute torture. Because the more I tried to keep still, the more I twitched.
Well, they were very long exposures, weren't they?
Well, they were, but by the time 6 o'clock came, I was so exhausted, I was sort of absolutely flopping, so one at least stayed still then.
It was so uncomfortable, I remember, because he would say, put your head on one side, stick your chin in, your stomach out,
Stick
cross
your
your
stomach
legs.
out.
I mean, one was like a ruddy corkscrew in the end.
At school, I really was a dud. I was a very bad scholar. I'm pretty near uneducated. I didn't read a book until I was 18, really. I learned a lot at school, but nothing to do with the things that I should have learned. I went to St. Cyprian's, Eastbourne, which was really quite a famous preparatory school where Cyril Connolly and George Orwell were at the same time as me, and we had a very ferocious headmistress. If you got into favor with her, your life was really worth living, but if you were out of favor, as the expression had it, then it really was awful. And I learned how to keep in favor by all sorts of horrible ruses. It's really rather shaming, and I suppose in a way it was good training for later life.
He used to sing, and every Saturday night there was a school concert, and he would get up and sing these hits from the Bing Boys and other 1914 reviews. And he would step forward and sing, "If you were the only girl in the world and I was the only boy." And then I say his voice was small but true. And when he sang these sentimental songs, imitating Violet Lorraine or Beatrice Lilly, the 80-odd wild Frisians felt there could be no other boy in the world for them. For a moment, the whole structure of character and duty tottered, and even the principles of hanging on, muddling through, and building empires were called into question. Well, he was what is called an aesthete. Absolutely. I mean, everything about him was an aesthete. He didn't live for the mind, and he didn't live for games. He lived for his feelings and his response to art, and in this case it was the theatre. I should say his first love was the theatre.
I loved acting, and we had end of term Gilbert and Sullivan productions, and I used to curry enormous favor by painting programs which were sold for 2 and 6 to the parents when they came down. So I was useful.
My first impression of Cecil didn't especially indicate anything except that he was a very attractive young man, because I saw him in an Oxford sitting room full of chattering people, and there wasn't a chance for him to show much more than that. He's always been very gaily dressed, but I think very subtly has adapted his own style to his stage in life. His clothes are very characteristic. I feel he was perhaps a little inhibited in them by the fact that when we were younger, men's dress was duller and more sober.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Glenn. How are you? Nice to see you again. It's time for some new hats, I'm afraid. But I'm awfully pleased with that sort of mush-colored velvet one. I think that would be terribly nice.
Possibly if he'd lived now, when the men's dress can be more fanciful, he'd have had more chance to shine. But he managed to shine pretty well. And of course he was wonderful at a thing like a fancy dress party. The best party I ever went to was the fancy dress party he gave at Ashcombe in the 30s. And I think he changed his fancy dress about 3 times during the evening. I can't remember, but he always seemed to be different.
This stuff is awfully good. It keeps the wind out. It never wears out. And the shabbier it gets, the nicer it is. I really love it. Adore corduroy.
They're the sort of full...
A really big cap.
Full floppy ones, yes.
Where in the country, I do a lot of gardening, and I find that they fall over one's nose so that one can't really see. What does Cecil Beaton look like? Well, I think he's very distinguished looking, with aristocratic features, an aquiline nose, lots of cartilage and good bone, rather hideous mouth, very nice hands, tall, very good length of leg, which is something that's most important, especially as one puts on a good deal of weight
Michelin tires round the middle. I don't think good looking at all. I mean, it's not the sort of looks that I would like to have at all. I'd like to have much more sort of wart face, a mushroom face, an embryo face. I don't want to be distinguished. I hate that. You like my tie? I designed
It's very good, isn't it?
Well, I designed it for America. I'm rather pleased with the way they turned out. It was a friend of mine, Curl Ling, who was at Oxford, who said to me something which was very wise and happened to be very true. He said, I don't think you need worry too much about your career and what you're going to be. I should just become a friend of the Sitwells and see what happens. Well, I didn't make a beeline for the Sitwells, but strangely enough, really, that's what happened. I got to know Edith. I took photographs of her, which was a very high point in my career, because one couldn't take a bad picture of her. And Osbert was very kind to me. In fact, I became a great friend of the three of them. They got other people to sit for me. They encouraged me. They gave me a job to do the decor for a play that they wrote. And through them, I think that I got my foot into the door of the sort of life in London that I really was craving for. My name became really quite well known in very strange ways. An uncle came to dinner one night, and he said he'd been to a vaudeville theatre in the Edgware Road, and some red-nosed comedian had ended his act by saying, well, I'm just going off to be photographed by Cecil Beaton. That was very astonishing for my father, who was quite baffled at the way things suddenly moved, because very soon I went to America. I had saved about 50 quid, I suppose. I didn't know what would happen to me, but I was confident that I would really just take America by storm. Well, it took some time, and it was touch and go whether I could get out with paying my bills or not. And then suddenly things went well. I got a terribly good contract from Mr. Condé Nast to work for the rest of my life, I imagine, with him. And I showed it to my father, who saw me looking like a piano tuner when I came back. And he said, well, this sounds all right, but is it? Well, he had a point there. Those early ones are very easy to recognize because I just couldn't shove enough into the picture. I mean, the poor sitter didn't stand a chance against the background.
The background's more important almost than the sitters, isn't it?
Oh, yes. There's the sitter really just is an extra.
So this is more like window dressing than taking pictures?
Well, I haven't dressed any windows, so I really don't know.
No, but the background's like, it could be a window.
Ah, yes.
No?
Well, except that I don't really quite enjoy the simile.
Well, how would you describe them?
Well, I think that they're very typical of the period that we talked about when we were always in fancy dress and were very frivolous and quite creative in our own absolutely hectic way. You know, cellophane was the new thing, and American cloth, and shiny tinsel foil, and Oliver Messel masks, and doves, and I don't know, the lot.
You could almost describe them as being very camp, no?
Very camp. Oh, yes. High camp. Good. Good.